It's said that time heals all wounds. In some cases, that's true, but what about when time creates a wound, or only exasperates it? That's the idea I want to cover today, and the anime in question is The Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Despite the planetary travel, the spaceships, and the advanced weapons, there is something undeniably human about how societies conduct themselves in this anime. And it isn't something heartwarming or encouraging, but something that's rather depressing, but it makes this seemingly unrealistic world just as real as our own. So this anime season, I decided to give Legend of the Galactic Heroes a try in the form of its remake. I had always heard about this series, but never gave it much thought. Not for any particular reason. I suppose there was just other shows on my mind, so I never really got around to it. As of this recording, I'm currently caught up to the 2018 remake at 8 episodes out of 12, and I've been so surprised by how interested in this series I am, and how brilliantly written it is. Once this season ends, I'll probably go back and watch the 1988-97 series because I've heard good things about that as well. Now I'll get started on the point of this video. So to give this some personal context, I've grown up in an era where technology has advanced at a rapid rate. Communicating is easier, all forms of entertainment are becoming more immersive and accessible, and even the nature of education has changed a lot, towards online and visual learning. That much has not changed in my lifetime, and for most of that time I both lived through and saw new strides being taken towards the goal of gender, sexual, religious, and racial equality. Nowhere near perfect, of course, but a lot better than previous eras can say. And in more recent years under the Obama administration, steps were even taken to thaw relations with Cuba, Vietnam, and Iran, nations that my country of birth, the United States, had been at odds with for decades. For a while, things seemed to be on the up and up in most fronts. I got comfortable. Too comfortable. And I assumed things would continue to be on the uptrend, that things were bound for improvement, and all of that was brought to a screeching halt by the nomination and eventual election of Donald Trump. White nationalism was empowered, attacks on ethnic and religious minorities increased, the online sphere became all the more hostile as racists, willfully ignorant people, and alt-right nationalists littered social media, becoming more vocal and more bold due to the Trump administration. While Trump was campaigning, I was not threatened. I assumed that the US had changed too much for a man with his ideas to ever be elected, and that he was pining for an America that no longer existed. But I was wrong, and against all the progress of the last half a century, we now seem closer to square one than actual equality or peace among citizens. Now, I apologize for the long diatribe, but I told you all that to raise a potential point. The idea that technology may advance, but society might not always follow it. Time does not always equal progress, and that's something I feel that Legend of the Galactic Heroes, 8 episodes in, has addressed very well. While history has proven that even technology has had bumps and curves in reaching where it is today, I'll stay on topic and speak about societal change. In Legend of the Galactic Heroes, humanity has managed to reach and conquer the stars, and space travel has been made accessible and more advanced than ever. Yet this apparent conquering of the universe itself has not come without its issues. The Galactic Empire, quite possibly one of the first post-Earth superpowers, fractured under its own weight. The government became increasingly authoritarian after the election of Rudolf von Goldenbaum, a Hitler-esque figure in the world of the show. Aside from the totalitarianism, discriminatory policies began to be put into effect, such as the Inferior Genes Act, as explained by Captain Oberstein, which would have seen anyone with a disability or deformity of any kind killed. It also seems that racial inequality has been the norm in the Galactic Empire since Rudolf, since basically the entire army and bureaucracy is white and of German origin, not to mention an entrenched sexism seems to have taken root within the Empire. All of these factors led to the creation of the Free Planets Alliance, a new state split off from the Empire, being more progressive and democratic. Even then, the Free Planets Alliance is not without its own problems. Despite being far more open, multi-ethnic, and accepting than the Empire, a lot of the army and state is also male and white, signifying that the Alliance still has ways to go itself, even if it's way better than the Empire. This sort of mirrors North America in the real world in the last 100 or so years. While the USA and Canada were spared authoritarian regimes and ethnic cleansing, they still had their issues of segregation, violence towards minorities, gender inequality, and economic and judicial discrimination of all sorts of people. They also still had hardline nationalism, especially during the Cold War, which saw anyone who seemed even remotely sympathetic of the rival communists be harassed, arrested, or even killed. This is mirrored in The Legend of the Galactic Heroes by the patriotic Night Corps, who harass and beat those who express anti-war views in the Free Planets Alliance. This goes to show that societies that pride themselves on not being their rivals still have serious issues of their own, which has always been the case in conflict no matter what period of history you're looking at. And looking at the universe of the show, some may ask, why would such an advanced society which literally conquered the stars be so fractured and imperfect? How is that even possible? Sometimes people imagine the far future as a technological utopia where race, gender, and sexual orientation are non-issues. But the reality is, no matter what we achieve technologically and territorially, these are still humans we're talking about, and this is a trend in human behavior. See the Roman Empire, for example. Starting with the name, the Roman Empire. Most know that it actually didn't start like that. Rome before then was a republic which elected leaders and instituted balances on power. It was nothing like our democracies today, of course, but Rome eventually went from being a republic to an empire with rulers for life. Rome also had one of the most prosperous scientific and philosophical communities of its time, until such ideas fell out of favor with time, and were eventually lost when the empire fell, not to be rediscovered and re-embraced until the 1500s, 1,000 or so years later. Let's not also forget that homosexuality was a common and mostly accepted practice in ancient Greece and Rome, and in the pre-Islamic Middle East, before the rise of Abrahamic religion in these regions made being gay a forbidden practice. The Persian Empire was one of the most prosperous and advanced nations in classical antiquity, also being notably tolerant of minority peoples, having relatively good gender equality for its time, and having a good justice system. Eventually, however, corruption reigned supreme. Rulers and nobility engaged in power struggles, satraps, local governors akin to modern state and provincial governors were allowed to play with their power unchecked, and Persia's own mismanagement of Ionia and Egypt all played their part in allowing Alexander the Great to topple the Achaemenid dynasty. The later Sassanid dynasty strictly enforced Zoroastrianism on its people, which divided them greatly, while also conquering the Arab Lakamid kingdom, and this backfired on them as the Rashidun Caliphate was able to invade relatively easily, as it had united persecuted Arabs and disgruntled minorities against the Sassanids. And this pattern has always continued. These are just two of the more prominent examples in my mind. I can go on forever about nations and empires from all over the world at all different points in human history, which started out tolerant and advanced, before succumbing to nationalism, religious division, persecution, greed, and discrimination. In most cases, it led to a specific nation's downfall, or at least their irreversible change. The fact of the matter is, humans will always be humans no matter where they are, so it's undeniably realistic that even a space-traveling interplanetary society can be divided on so many levels. Because things will always be the same so long as humans are the dominant species in any given area. So I find it fascinating that even in space, surrounded by all this unbelievable technology, these people are contending with the exact same issues that all their ancestors have been plagued with, and having similar difficulty in overcoming these situations. Characters in the show are asking the same questions we have always been asking. Is our war justified? Why did it have to be like this? Why can't I just be accepted? Why do people hate me? Should I fight? Should I run? Is what I'm doing right or wrong? And how will I benefit from everything going on? And will I be safe? And it is for this reason that so far I find this show so compelling, and I absolutely recommend either version of this anime. Even if you think one version is bad, try the other, because you can learn so much about your own society and where we are headed, and it can provoke questions that do not have definitive answers. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. This has been Thunderbro. Thanks, and have a good day.